I mean, you have.
This is an ABC News special report. Now reporting, George Stephanopoulos.
Good afternoon. We're coming on the air right now because President Trump in the Roosevelt Room of the White House about to make a major announcement on trade imposing steel and aluminum tariffs. You see him there greeting steelworkers from Pittsburgh and now coming to the podium.
Thank you very much, everybody. I'm honored to be here with our incredible steel and aluminum workers. And you are truly the backbone of America. You know that. Very special people. I've known you and people that are very closely related to you for a long time. You know that. I think it's probably the reason I'm here. So I want to thank you. I also want to thank Secretary Mnuchin, Ambassador Lighthizer, Secretary Ross, Peter Navarro, Mike Pence, our great Vice President. They've worked so hard on getting this going and getting it done, and people are starting to realize how important it is. We have to protect and build our steel and aluminum industries, while at the same time showing great flexibility and cooperation toward those that are really friends of ours, both on a trade basis and a military basis. A strong steel and aluminum industry are vital to our national security, absolutely vital. Steel is steel. You don't have steel, you don't have a country. Our industries have been targeted for years and years, decades in fact, by unfair foreign trade practices leading to the shuttered plants and mills, the laying off of millions of workers, and the decimation of entire communities. And that's going to stop, right? It's going to stop. This is not merely an economic disaster, but it's a security disaster. We want to build our ships, we want to build our planes, we want to build our military equipment with steel, with aluminum from our country. And now we're finally taking action to correct this long overdue problem. It's a travesty. Today, I'm defending America's national security by placing tariffs on foreign imports of steel and aluminum. We will have a 25% tariff on foreign steel and a 10% tariff on foreign aluminum when the product comes across our borders. It's a process called dumping, and they dumped more than at any time on any nation, anywhere in the world. And it drove our plants out of business. It drove our factories out of business. And we want a lot of steel coming into our country, but we want it to be fair. And we want our workers to be protected. And we want, frankly, our companies to be protected. By contrast, we will not place any new tax on product made in the USA. So there's no tax if a product is made in the USA. You don't want to pay tax? Bring your plant to the USA. There's no tax, which we will benefit from the massive tax cuts that we have in place. We have passed the largest tax cut plan in the country's history, and that has caused really tremendous success between that and regulation cutting, and I think maybe regulation cutting every bit as much, and we have a long way to go on regulations, but we've already cut more than any president in history. So we're urging all companies to buy American. That's what we want, buy American. The action that I'm taking today follows a 9-month investigation by the Department of Commerce, Secretary Ross, documenting a growing crisis in our steel and aluminum production that threatens the security of our nation and also is bad for us economically and with jobs. The American steel aluminum industry has been ravaged by aggressive foreign trade practices. It's really an assault on our country. It's been an assault. They know better than anybody. Other countries have added production capacity that far exceeds demand and flooded the world market with cheap metal that is subsidized by foreign governments, creating jobs for their country and taking away jobs from our country. I've been talking about this for a long time, a lot longer than my political career. I've been talking about this for many years. For example, it takes China about 1 month to produce as much steel as they produce in the United States in an entire year, because we've closed down so much capacity. Plants closed all over the United States, and some plants I see, massive plants from 40 years ago, and they're working now in a little corner of the building. Well, we're going to get those buildings open again and producing again. And that's going to be a great thing for our country. And this is only the first stop. Aluminum imports now account for more than 90% of the primary American demand. Over the last 2 decades, nearly 2/3 of American raw steel companies have gone out of business. More than 1/3 of the steel jobs have disappeared. 6 primary aluminum smelters, which is a big deal, have permanently shut down since just 2012. The actions we're taking today are not a matter of choice. They're a matter of necessity for our security. We're already seeing the national security benefits of this order. Yesterday, in anticipation that we'd be here today, U.S. Steel announced it's reopening a mill in Illinois, a big one, and recalling 500 workers immediately. That's going on all over the country. And by the way, it went on with solar panels, which we did 3 months ago, and washing machines, where they were dumping washing machines all over our country. And now they're expanding plants to make washing machines. We put the tax on, a lot of you are here. A skilled, trained workforce in steel is a crucial element of America's national security and must be protected. After the signing of this proclamation, Century Aluminum in Kentucky, Century is a great company, will be investing over $100 million to restart and upgrade their idled military-grade, high-quality aluminum production, which is also critically important to our national security. That's 150,000 additional tons of aluminum. And think of it, this is a closed plant, and now they're doing 150,000 tons. Production and an additional 300 workers, and ultimately many more hired in the great state of Kentucky. A package of sometimes $90,000 per worker. Our greatest presidents all understood, from Washington to Lincoln to Jackson to Teddy Roosevelt, that America must have a strong, vibrant, and independent manufacturing base. Has to have it. President McKinley, who felt very, very strongly about this, the country was very, very successful. We actually operated out of cash flow, if you can believe it. The protective tariff policy of the Republicans, he said, has made the lives of masses of our countrymen sweeter and brighter and brighter and brighter. It is the best for our citizenship and our civilization, and it opens up a higher and better destiny for our people. Many politicians lamented the decline of our once proud industries, and many countries denounced global excess capacity. But no one took action. All of our politicians, they saw what was happening to our country. I've seen it for 25 years. I've been talking about it. Talked about Japan, talked about China. But the politicians never did anything about it. But now they are. Our factories were left to rot and to rust all over the place. Thriving communities turned into ghost towns. You guys know that, right? Not any longer. The workers who poured their souls into building this great nation were betrayed. But that betrayal is now over. I'm delivering on a promise I made during the campaign, and I've been making it for a good part of my life. If I ever did this, I never really thought I would. I said, let's run for president, and look what happened. And part of the reason it happened is you. And my message having to do with you, and other messages also. Security, military, the wall, the border, a lot of good messages, but this was one of the most important. My most important job is to keep American people safe. And as you know, we just had approved a $700 billion military budget the largest ever, $716 billion next year. That means not only safety, but it means jobs. It also means the use of steel from our country. But if the same goals can be accomplished by other means, America will remain open to modifying or removing the tariffs for individual nations as long as we can agree on a way to ensure that their products no longer threaten our security. So I've put Ambassador Lighthizer, great gentleman, in charge of negotiating with countries that seek an alternative to the steel and aluminum tariffs. The fact is we've been treated so badly over the years by other countries. I think really we've been treated very badly by our politicians, by our presidents, by people that represented us that didn't frankly know what they were doing. And we lose $800 billion a year on trade. Every year, $800 billion. It's been going on for a long time. $300 billion, $400 billion, $500 billion, got up to $600 billion. And it keeps going, but it's going to start changing, has to change. We're negotiating now with China. We're in the midst of a big negotiation. I don't know that anything's going to come of it. They have been very helpful. President Xi, I have great respect for, a lot of respect. But I don't know that anything is going to come of that. But we're going to cut down the deficits one way or the other. We have a deficit with China of at least $500 billion. And when you add intellectual property, it's much higher than that. That's a year. At the same time, due to the unique nature of our relationship with Canada and Mexico, we're negotiating right now NAFTA. And we're going to hold off the tariff on those two countries to see whether or not we're able to make the deal on NAFTA. National security, very important aspect of that deal. And if we're making the deal on NAFTA, this will figure into the deal and we won't have the tariffs on Canada or Mexico. If we don't make the deal on NAFTA, and if we terminate NAFTA because they're unable to make a deal that's fair for our workers and fair for our farmers, we love our farmers, and fair for our manufacturers, then we're going to terminate NAFTA and we'll start all over again, or we'll just do it a different way. But we'll terminate NAFTA, and that'll be it. But I have a feeling we're going to make a deal on NAFTA. I've been saying it for a long time. We either make a deal or we terminate. And if we do, there won't be any tariffs on Canada, and there won't be any tariffs on Mexico. One other thing, some of the countries that we're dealing with are great partners, great military allies, and we're going to be looking at that very strongly. The tariffs don't go effective for at least another 15 days. And we're going to see who's treating us fairly, who's not treating us fairly. Part of that's going to be military. Who's paying the bills, who's not paying the bills. We subsidize many rich countries with our military. They pay not 100 cents on the dollar, in some cases not 50 cents on the dollar, and they're massively wealthy countries. So we have to stop that. And that will enter into the equation also. Very interesting, I saw a tweet just came in from Elon Musk, who's using our wonderful space facilities and did a great job 3 weeks ago. He said, for example, an American car going to China pays 25% import duty, but a Chinese car coming to the United States only pays 2.5%, a tenfold difference. So an American car going to China, think of that, pays 25% import duty. So we send our car over there, pay 25%. They send their car over here, 2.5%. 10 points, that's from Elon, but everybody knows it. They've known it for years, they never did anything about it. It's got to change. We're going to be doing a reciprocal tax program at some point, so that if China is going to charge us 25%, or if India is going to charge us 75%, and we charge them nothing, if they're at 50, or they're at 75, or they're at 25, we're going to be at those same numbers. It's called reciprocal. It's a mirror tax. So they charge us 50, we charge them 50. Right now, they'll charge us 50, we charge them nothing. Doesn't work. So that's called a reciprocal tax or mirror tax, and we're going to be doing a lot of that. It's the first year we've really set the stage. A lot of it had to do with structurally we had to go through certain procedures in order to get to this point, but now we're at this point. American companies have not been treated fairly. And some American companies, frankly, have taken advantage of it and gone to other countries and developed in Mexico massive automobile plants, taking our jobs away and taking our companies down to Mexico to make the cars. And then they send them right across the border without tax, without anything. So we lose the jobs, they make the cars, they get all the benefits, then they sell the cars back into the United States. So we're changing things, and we're going to have a lot of great relationships. I think companies are going to be very happy in the end. I think that countries are going to be very happy. We're going to show great flexibility. And again, many of the countries that treat us the worst on trade and on military are our allies, as they like to call them. So we just want fairness. We just want fairness. We want everything to be reciprocal. And I think in the end, we're going to have a lot of great jobs. We're going to have a lot of great companies all coming back into our country. You see it the other day, Chrysler announced they're leaving Mexico. They're coming back into Michigan with a big plant. You haven't seen that in a long time, folks. You haven't seen that in a long time. So because I sort of grew up with this group of people, I know a lot about the steel industry, and I know a lot about the aluminum industry. We're going to bring them back. I thought maybe a few of you might like to say a couple of words. And there's only about 25 million people watching, so don't worry about it. Do you want to say something? Come on up. How are you? Okay, please.
There you have it right there. President Trump announcing after years of American workers being betrayed by the dumping of foreign steel here, called it an economic and national security disaster. He is now imposing 25% tariff on imported steel, 10% tariff on imported aluminum. I want to go to our chief White House correspondent, John Carl. One of the points the president made there is that he's keeping a campaign promise, keeping a commitment of his lifetime. That is true. He's been talking about this for a long time. But the process of getting there inside this White House, somewhat chaotic.
He's been entirely consistent on the issue of trade and talking about the need to fight what he calls unfair trade. But the process inside the White House, George, has been anything but consistent. They've been all over the map. We were given some guidance earlier this morning, suggestion that this was not happening today. Then suddenly it was on the schedule. It is happening. We were told it was going to be across the board on every country. Now you hear the president talking about exemptions, at least in the short term, for Canada and Mexico. But this was a highly controversial decision within the White House and within the Republican Party.
Yeah, the president getting a lot of pushback from the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, and a majority of House Republicans.
Yeah, and in fact, just a few minutes ago, Ryan actually said that he is still trying to get the president to change his mind on this.
Meantime, Rebecca Jarvis, our chief business correspondent, is here as well. And Rebecca, the president making the point there that he thinks this is going to bring back jobs to the United States. Most economists say it will cost more jobs because of the impact on those who consume steel and aluminum.
Almost all economists believe this, George. There's one study out today, 33,000 steel and aluminum jobs gained here, but 179,000 manufacturing jobs potentially lost to these tariffs. And the reason is that by increasing these tariffs, that increased the cost of doing business for any company that deals in steel and aluminum. Imagine car companies, home builders that use products to build homes, any company that deals in cans. Those products get more expensive for the companies to create and can ultimately drive up costs for consumers.
When this first came out last week, the financial markets took a big dive. On Friday, they've stabilized since then.
They have stabilized, and one of the bigger fears is the retaliation. What does this mean as it goes around the world? We've heard from China, we've heard from the European Union that they would retaliate if we hiked those tariffs on their products. And in particular, House Speaker Ryan, who's continuing to speak out against this, well, in his home state, you have Harley-Davidson. That is one of the targets of the EU. Bourbon, blue jeans, and motorcycles.
John Carl, the president surrounded there by his Treasury Secretary, Commerce Secretary, Trade Rep. Not there, his chief economic advisor, Gary Cohn, who's announced he's leaving the White House.
Gary Cohn was adamantly opposed to these tariffs, fought them throughout the first year of the Trump presidency whenever they came up. And he warned the president that it was not just bad policy, but this would have bad repercussions throughout the American economy, resulting in the price increases that you heard Rebecca talking about, resulting in retaliation from our neighbors. And he quit over this issue. I mean, he decided to leave the White House over this issue, perhaps the most widely respected member of the West Wing staff.
Leaving the White House within a couple weeks. There you have it, the president imposing tariffs on steel and aluminum imports into the United States. We'll be watching for the reaction.